I wrote a book. Welcome to this week's podcast. I have been talking about writing a book, a guide for academics and PhDs that are looking for careers outside of academia for years. But saying you want to do one thing and actually doing it are two different things. And finally, I had the opportunity earlier this year to start putting my thoughts to paper. I had always had an outline of what I wanted to say in this book, but finally, I got a book coach in the form of Dr. Joshua Dolezal, and I'll leave his information in the description of this video slash podcast episode, so that if you have been looking to write a book and need guidance and accountability, because this was big for me. I am accountable in so many areas of my life, but then I kept on putting this off, and Josh really helped me to finally do what I said I would do. So today, I am going to be reading the first chapter of the book for you. Now, trying to see if maybe I can start a second career in voiceover artistry. And so you can let me know in the comments or send me an email, hello@theboldphd.com, hello@theboldphd.com, to see if I have a future in in voiceover artistry. Okay, so let's get started with me reading this book. Chapter 1. Your degree doesn't guarantee a job. Whatever you do, don't turn your degree, discipline, or dissertation topic into a box. Most importantly, don't lock yourself in the box. I was raised in Ghana in West Africa. My father is a retired research scientist with a PhD from the University of Wales in Bangor. My mother, now retired, was an elementary and then junior high school teacher for 38 years. For both of them, formal education offered a ticket to a better life. Although I didn't have every luxury available to me when I was growing up, my parents worked very hard to make life for me and my siblings comfortable, and they largely had their education to thank for that. So from a very early age, my parents impressed on me the value of education and its power to change lives. Now, the good thing is I've always been a nerd. I used to read the dictionary for fun, and I always enjoyed discovering new scientific tidbits. The day my father brought home a scientific book series, I remember being excited to learn how rain was formed and why we saw lightning and heard claps of thunder during storms. And side note, the reason why I was interested in this is because we lived in the eastern region of Ghana, and the eastern region of Ghana gets a lot of rain. And so it was always intriguing to me, seeing hearing claps of thunder and seeing lightning. And it was really cool to read the science behind that. Okay, let's continue. I read about men and women in the United States and Russia going into space in rockets. And when I looked at the moon, I wondered if some of those people were walking on its surface right then. I loved learning, and the more I learned, the better I did in school. Winning quizzes and spelling bees and getting top grades in my classes gave me a heady feeling. Being told by teachers that I should become a doctor because I was so smart felt amazing. For me, school and learning were fun. As a result of this early success, I too bought into the half-truth that all I needed to do was put my head down, work hard, get good grades, and life would be golden. I'm not saying this doesn't happen for some people, but the mindset can be a trap that causes deep feelings of disappointment and failure if things don't go as planned. Every educational institution from my early days until college emphasized the value of hard work and its direct correlation on career success. And because I stayed in school for over 2 decades, this was the only paradigm I understood. Having this singular perspective left me woefully unprepared for the career curveballs that would be thrown at me later on in life. Let's fast forward this story to 2018. At this point, I had moved to the United States and gotten 3 degrees, including a PhD in microbiology and immunology. I had even managed to snag a postdoctoral researcher position at the University of California, San Diego, which is a top public university. Things seemed to be going in the right direction. I had followed the plan. I had gone from 1 degree to the next. While I encountered a few obstacles along the way, side note, because I was an international student and we go through a lot, my trajectory led steadily upward. Then one day in February 2018, the principal investigator of the lab where I worked announced that we were running out of research funding. As a result, he had to let all of us go within 90 days. Even though the news was unexpected and disappointing, I told myself I had a PhD, finding a new job should not be hard. I didn't know it then, but I was still caught in a mindset trap. Educational advancement versus career advancement. When we're children, our bodies grow automatically. A year goes by and we become bigger, stronger, and taller. We become more capable of doing things we didn't do just a year earlier. In school, we move from one grade to the next. We finish high school and go to university, where we once again advance with hard work and the knowledge that this growth is just a natural part of our progression. Automatic growth like this creates a subconscious belief that what happens after we finish a university degree should also be seamless. And because of this, many of us don't dedicate much time to career planning and development after school. Instead, we assume that because most things have happened by default or sheer force of will, our careers will follow suit. But successful careers don't happen by accident. Some people spend more time planning their vacations than they have ever spent thinking about which career path to follow, how they'll grow on that career path, or how they will build a resilient career in response to fast advancing technology or shifting governmental policies. I'm not here to shame anyone. This was my mindset too, until that fateful day in 2018. The lessons I learned in the aftermath of that event drove me to write this book. I decided to write it so others can learn from my mistakes and shift their mindsets faster than I did. The time to start thinking about designing the careers we want is long before we're looking for a job or an employer has let us go. On May 31st, 2018, my employment as a postdoctoral researcher officially ended at the University of California, San Diego. I said my goodbyes, held back tears, and drove home. I can't remember everything about that day, but it was a late spring day. It was sunny, and I remember thinking that everything would be all right, despite this being the first time I'd been laid off from a job. I had no idea it would take me nearly a year and a half to find a new position. Before I was laid off, I had been freelance writing to supplement my income. So I immediately let my clients know that I was available for more work while I began my job search. I thought it would take no more than 3 to 4 months to land on my feet. Day in and day out, I followed the playbook that had served me well throughout my schooling. I applied for jobs. I submitted written work to clients while running my son to and from school. In November 2018, after months of hearing nothing but crickets and their grandmothers from my applications, I finally landed an interview. This was the first interview in almost 6 months of applying for jobs. The interesting thing about this interview is that I didn't even apply for the role. While I was still a postdoc, I had applied for a field applications scientist role within a biotech company. The hiring manager didn't hire me then, but he kept my resume and followed me on LinkedIn. When another role opened up many months later, he thought I would be a good fit and reached out. I prepared by reading the company's website and news articles about their technologies. And with each interview stage, I made sure to give strategic answers. During the last interview, where I met with the hiring manager, he asked me the famous question, why should I hire you above the other candidates I'm interviewing for this role? I remember pausing for a moment. The only reason I could think of, more than my technical skills, more than my resume, more than anything I had ever done, was my son. At the time, my son required therapy for some special needs he had. Losing my health insurance from losing my postdoc meant my husband and I had to pay out of our pockets for him to get the therapy he desperately needed. We managed, but it was incredibly hard. Getting this job wasn't just for me. Landing this job also meant my son could get the therapy and services he needed. So I blurted out, I don't know about what the other people are bringing to this role, but I know that I would do anything for my son. I started a business and have grown it so that my son could have what he needs. I will do everything in this job to be good at it so I don't let my son down. At that point, my throat constricted and I willed myself not to cry. The hiring manager nodded and thanked me for sharing that with him. A few days later, I got the call offering me the job. But just 2 months later, an internal trainer at that company determined I wasn't learning the job fast enough, and so I was fired. This devastated me even more than when I was laid off from my postdoc. Once again, I was unemployed, overeducated. I had no paradigm for this. To say I was disappointed, disillusioned, and demoralized, to be unemployed would be like saying Niagara Falls is a stream. I couldn't believe it. I graduated from my bachelor's degree in biology summa cum laude. I finished a PhD in microbiology and immunology with 2 first author papers and 3 middle author papers. Yes, I know, and this is just side note, I know some of you are going to come in here and be like, 5 papers, that's not a whole lot. It was a lot for me, okay? I finished my PhD in 2015. Let's continue. My postdoc yielded 3 more papers. By every external standard, I was doing well. So why wouldn't anybody hire me? And who loses 2 jobs in 1 year? All this while, however, I never sat down to really think about what I wanted to do with my life. I had been following the well-beaten path that others had prepared for me, but I never questioned whether this was a path I wanted to claim for myself. And in my mind, there was no need for me to be picky about my career path. A job was a privilege, a prize, and any thoughts about designing a career felt selfish. After spending a few weeks throwing a pity party that only I attended, I decided to think seriously for the first time in my life what I wanted to do in my career. I was 35 years old. Nobody in all those years had taught me how to be intentional about designing, preparing, and going after the career I truly wanted. Also, it finally clicked that my multiple degrees didn't guarantee me anything. Nobody owed me a job just because I had worked hard all my life. This wasn't an easy pill to swallow, but it was at that point in history that I realized that I had been handed a blank canvas and could paint my career in whichever way I wanted. No more following the default path. I didn't know exactly how to proceed, but choosing to design my career with intention is one of the best personal breakthroughs I've made. My education might not have guaranteed me a job, but it did provide me with all the skills and tools I needed to dream up any career I wanted. The only thing I had to do was shift my thinking so I could prioritize designing a career that pulled on my skills and passions, and which had nothing to do with any path that anybody else had prescribed for me. Whatever you do, don't stick yourself in a box. Any career box you have created for yourself is self-imposed. Your degree or discipline is not a box. It's a foundation. PhD programs groom you to be an expert in your field. During my PhD program, I became an expert on curly, a protein expressed by probiotic bacteria and its interaction with intestinal immune cells. I built my identity around this expertise for a long time. I only looked for jobs that had microbiology or immunology somewhere in the job description. It was very hard to break out of that identity to see all that was available to me. Since 2021, I've had the privilege of interviewing PhDs and academics from all kinds of backgrounds. First for my podcast, and then for collaborators. Side note, last year I did a whole series of 50 interviews for Higher Ed Plus. Highly recommend you check that out. Just look for Higher Ed Plus. You'll find the interview series there. I have also held informational interviews and coffee chats and responded to hundreds of emails and direct messages on social media. One observation I've drawn from these conversations, especially from people who've applied their degree to a path that makes less sense for their degree at first glance, is that it's not about your degree. I've spoken to English PhDs who ended up working in data analysis, education PhDs who ended up in recruiting, scientists who combine their love for art and science into careers in medical illustration. In each of these stories, a world of opportunity opened up the moment they stopped seeing their degree as a limiting box and started seeing it as a foundation to build on. Every year, without fail, at least one person will send me an email or direct message that says something like, "My PhD is in microbiology. How do I use that to find a job?" This question is not only wrong, it's reactive. Let's rephrase the question. The question you want to ask is, I have a PhD in microbiology. What are the top 3 roles I want? And what are the skills and experiences I've acquired on the way to getting my degrees and, whatever the career is? Because sometimes people go into PhD programs with vocational experience as well. This is a side note, right? So the way we rephrase the question is, I have a PhD in microbiology. What are the top 3 roles I want? And what are the skills and experiences I've acquired on my educational and vocational journey so far that will be useful in those roles? Later in the book, we'll walk through some of the steps to help you identify career paths that make sense for your skills, education, and passions. For now, I'll demonstrate how the person who asked me this question, right, can get out of the degree box as they begin to explore careers in data science and medical communications. And I use these as 2 examples, okay? So number 1, this person decides to explore data science. You can begin to think like this. During my PhD, I used R and Python to analyze data we collected. I see that a lot of data analyst roles require that I know R and Python. I'll make sure to highlight these on my resume and cover letter, as well as emphasize the impact the data I analyze makes in a real-world setting when I get into interviews. A lot of these jobs also require that I know Tableau. I'm not as familiar with Tableau, but I can get up to speed on that because I know how to learn, because your PhD taught you how to learn. Do you see how this person's degree in microbiology is not even an issue here? The degree was just the container for the skills they may be hired for. Let's try another one. And this next role is for a role in medical communications. While I was getting my degree in microbiology, I became a ninja at designing PowerPoint presentations. I also created multiple educational pieces that broke down the concepts of the virus I was studying and taught these principles to high school students and college freshmen who rotated in our lab for a special college/high school program. I also shadowed a regulatory writer working at a local biopharma company for 1 month, and she showed me the kinds of documents she has to file with the FDA. Again, this person's degree in microbiology is purely a container for the communications and writing skills a company may require for people who work in this role. If you're not sure what types of jobs you could explore with your background, don't worry, we'll go over some exercises later to help you think through that. In the meantime, you could also download a list of over 30 career paths I created for PhDs and academics just like you by visiting theboldphd.com/careers list. I'm using microbiology as an example here because I'm most familiar with this background, but this idea can apply to any area of study. I promise it's not your degree or your discipline that is keeping you from a job. Yes, I understand that we live in a job market where technological shifts are upending whole industries and seismic governmental policies are shaking institutions we once assumed were secure. Despite these changes, one thing hasn't changed. It is your power to take the skills and tools you acquired through your formal education, or to brush up on those skills, or even to learn entirely new skill sets and use those to design the kind of career you want. Is your next job hiding in a side interest? Before we move on to the rest of the book, I want to talk about side interests and how those may be the secret to helping you design a career you're happy to wake up to every day. What is a side interest? It is anything that doesn't look like it could land you a job. It's likely unrelated to your educational pursuits, but which you enjoy and have significant experience doing or practicing. Let me give you an example of what I mean. I once interviewed a woman I'll call Mary. Mary has a PhD in social psychology. Her studies focused on racial stereotyping, prejudice, and discrimination. Like many PhD students, she originally wanted to become a professor and pursue a tenure track position. But the reality of the academic job market, with its limited openings, intense competition, and lack of geographic choice, made her rethink that path. She realized she wanted more flexibility, better pay, and the ability to choose where to live, something that academia doesn't always offer. When Mary decided to leave academia, she didn't have a clear plan for how to use her dissertation topic and expertise to land a role outside of academia. Instead of stressing out, she leaned into her interest. Mary loves anime and had been watching anime and playing games on one of the largest anime streaming websites, Crunchyroll. One day she had a thought. What if I could work there? So she searched the Crunchyroll website and saw an open research analyst position. It wasn't exactly like her PhD work, but it involved using research and data analysis to inform marketing strategy at the company. Research and data analysis were skills she had acquired during her doctoral program. Mary took a chance, applied for the job, and got it. When she shared this story with me, I really would have loved to be a fly on the wall to see how the interview went. Mary now helps Crunchyroll develop partnerships, create bundles with other streaming services, and find ways to attract new subscribers. It's not exactly the kind of work she did in grad school, but her background in data analysis, research, and project management, and the fact that she was using Crunchyroll as an entertainment tool, gave her the tools she needed to succeed. Mary's story is proof that the interests you explore out of curiosity and passion can sometimes lead to unexpected career paths. Her advice: start by looking at the products and services you already use and love. If you're passionate about a company or product, check their job postings. You might be surprised at how well your skills fit into a totally different industry. You have the power. And I want to pause here and really say this, that you do have the power. I know that a lot of the time we tend to think that the companies have the power, the government has the power, somebody else has the power. And to some extent, I see that. But I also believe that you have the power. We have the power, right? And once you accept that you have the power, then it doesn't matter what's going on externally. You don't lose your sense of agency. Because one of the things I realized is that the moment you lose your sense of agency, you begin to lose hope. And we need hope. And so whatever you do, don't lose your sense of agency and the sense that you have power to make decisions that move your life in the direction that you want. All right, let's get back to it. You have the power. By the middle of 2019, I decided I would paint a portrait of the career I wanted. I won't lie, at this point, I had become jaded by the fact that all my job applications ended with the same outcome: an email that thanked me for my application and their decision to move on with a different candidate, or radio silence. But it was also around this point that my resolve around designing and creating a career I loved solidified. Until that point, I had seen freelance writing as an interim solution to my unemployed status. However, as I reflected on what I wanted to do for the future, I realized that my love indeed lay in writing and teaching. I felt most alive when I was doing those two things. I'd heard of medical writing, but hadn't given it much thought. I was writing for several types of clients, although casting my mind back during that last year before I got my first science writer, I was mostly writing for health care clients. And this was when I had just found out about medical writing. Anyway, I had heard of medical writing, but hadn't given it much thought. I was writing for several types of clients, including writing product descriptions for a spa parts company, for a personal finance blog, and even Amazon product descriptions. While I was still a postdoc, I had met a handful of people who had PhDs who were writers on a career panel that the Postdoc Association at UCSD had organized. This was my first exposure to the idea, and I even ended up meeting with one of those panelists at her office and learned the inner workings of how she had started a PR agency following her PhD. But somewhere in my mind, I told myself that enjoying something and doing it for a living on a full-time basis only happened for the lucky people. In 2019, as I began to realize that I had to design my career because nobody was showing up to do it for me, I met a PhD who had started her own scientific communications company. She was looking for a contractor to help her on a project and came across my LinkedIn profile. That started a conversation and later led to doing some paid work with her. During one of our first conversations, she advised me to refer to myself as a bioscience and health writer in my LinkedIn profile if I wanted to attract more clients in that niche. Around that time, I also learned about the American Medical Writers Association and how people were full-time science and medical writers. All these events combined with introspection led me to decide that becoming a scientific writer was the path for me. I continued to freelance until in 2021, when I landed a full-time science writer role with a life science marketing agency. Becoming a science writer was the career move I needed, and I've never regretted choosing this path. And note here that I said I'm choosing this path. Up until that point, I had never chosen, had only gone by default, because I thought that was the next step. I wake up every day excited to create new content pieces that educate or help buying decisions for the audiences I write for. I used to have to drag myself to my postdoc job, but it was a job, and so I never complained. I just powered through it. Interestingly, enjoying your work ends up paying off in so many other ways. By choosing a path I enjoyed and aligned with the skills I was able to share about it generally through social media. And that has led me to being invited by groups like the Genetic Society of America and universities like the University of Oxford and the University of Illinois, Chicago, to name a few, to speak on this career path. Your degree or discipline will not guarantee you a job, and it's definitely not a box. But if you're intentional about thinking through your skills, your side interests, what you enjoy doing, and how to position those as a value proposition for an employer, you too can design and land a career you thrive in. And that's chapter 1. How did I do? Did I do well? I made some mistakes along the way, but I wanted to share that with you. Now, this book it's called Navigating the P.I.V.O.T. It is available on Amazon. The ebook is available on Amazon right now for pre-order. I'm working on getting the paperback up there as well. And so I'm going to leave a link, and it would be my honor for you to purchase a pre-order copy. it would be my honor. And I have this goal, I have this crazy goal of getting 300 pre-orders. I'm putting that out there so that you hear it. 300 pre-orders. The book officially comes out on November 6th, and it would be my honor for you to pre-order. If you're waiting for the paperback, hey, I got you, okay? But for all my ebook lovers, it's up now and you can get that. That's it for today's episode.